Let's move to our third distinguished panelist, Mr. Ahmer Bilal Soofi. He will now present his paper titled The Quranic Legal Principles for Justice, Building a Legislative Framework for Equity and Fairness. Please, the row is yours.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable guests, delegates, members of the panel, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. I will be talking to you with reference to principles of justice, principles of fairness in the Quran, and how, under law, we can relate the both, and what is the need of necessary legislation in that. The starting point would be to formulate that the Quran, for each one of us, in addition to being the ihkam, is also a covenant that Allah has with each one of us, the believers. And from amongst the believers, those who do the trade, those who are into financial work, those who are into business, or those who are doing any kind of entrepreneurship, with them, the Quran has a very specific covenant. I call it the covenant with the entrepreneurs. And that covenant that Quran has with the entrepreneurs creates a personal responsibility on every believer to fulfill certain obligations for which not only he may be rewarded in the jurisdiction herein, but also in the jurisdiction hereafter. So two distinct jurisdictions are recognized by any Muslim believer on account of his belief, the jurisdiction herein and the jurisdiction hereafter. So everything that we do is to be related to what we get here and what we eventually get in the jurisdiction hereafter. So I would suggest that while we take Quran as a covenant between the believers, and within the believers, the subset of entrepreneurs, we have to understand that the covenant requires the believers for fair business practices. The fairness in the business, or the ethical fairness, could be drawn from the Quran, could be drawn from Usul-e-Fiqh, could be drawn from Tafasir, could be drawn from Sunnah, and it could be drawn from contemporary legislation that exists in each of the countries relating to multiple issues on business practices, competition commission compliance frameworks, laws relating to abolishing of bribery, laws relating to transparency, corporate good governance frameworks. That all means compliance. So entrepreneurs' obligation towards the Quran is to honor what he agrees to. And my formulation is that since every law in every country is also a legislative covenant, so therefore, as entrepreneurs, we have a duty to hold it up. The crucial role of contracts in entrepreneurship and economy. The Quran tells us very clearly we have to write what we want to talk about, what we want to transact. The specific tutorial provided, only divine book which provides a tutorial. Knowing full well the significance of sanctity of contract, it's so important for economic development. No wonder Article 1, Sub-Article 10 of the US Constitution talks about exactly the same thing. You have to uphold the contract, and you will not make any law which abrogates a contract. Striking similarity, the Quran is trying to take us towards economic prosperity. Oral promises have to be upheld, contrary to the law of contract that we have, contrary to the Vienna Convention on Laws of Treaties. One of my team is working on the comparison of the Vienna Convention, laws of treaties, which does not make admissible oral contracts. The Quran treaty law, the Quran contract law makes oral agreements admissible for the jurisdiction hereafter. The seed financing of a startup, a strategic text of the zakat, inducing entrepreneurs to put into motion the ideal assets. The following the sunnah of the entrepreneurship of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him. What a successful entrepreneur he was. And what are we, to what extent are we following could be a separate topic. Upholding business standards. Everything that you have, whether it's ISO 9000 framework, whether it's the metrology domestic legal framework, we have it in India, we have it in Bangladesh, we have it in every country, including Pakistan, metering associations, ISO 9000 frameworks, standards relating to garments if you are a manufacturer, standards relating to banking practices if you are a banker, standards relating to each and every standard, licensing regimes of a lawyer, licensing regimes of a doctor. They are all standards which have to be upheld. The iron ring of the Quran is a subject that we are working on, in which we identified in Canada, when an engineer graduates, they are given an iron ring to make them recognize the importance and significance of engineering standards that have to be kept up, failing which the bridges collapse. So the iron ring of Quran is telling us we have to uphold each and every professional standard, no matter what profession we are in. Corporate social responsibility, bribing prohibited, something which was in Quran today is in UN Convention on Corruption. 2013 was negotiated, and they are globally recognized wrongs. Covenant of fair marketing and customer satisfaction. Riba, of course, is the main theme that we have been discussing. For fair treatment of labor. Now, the corresponding, while labor is very important and their treatment is so much accorded in the Sunnah of the Prophet, peace be upon, there are specific ahadith. But if a believer has this in mind, that while complying with International Labour Organization Convention, he is fulfilling what the Quran mandates, so he will get the credit for the jurisdiction hereafter, or labor laws of any country. So my view of economic architecture of the Quran is 4 covenants that Quran has with each believer and potential arbiter. One is to uphold the contracts. Every contract that you make, no matter if it's a private contract, if it's an oral contract, if it's a business contract, contract with friends, wives, people to meet, everything has to be upheld. You are accountable for that. Covenant to excel, ladies and gentlemen, means as a Muslim, as a believer, we have an enhanced duty to excel in this world, in the worldly role, because we are the Khalifa, we are the deputy, we are declared. Our Creator has made a claim in respect of our capabilities that I am creating the best of the best species. So it's just like a teacher telling certain students, he, in my view, will do very well in exams. Now the onus shifts on the students to perform. If they don't perform, they are not fulfilling the claim made, the honor of the claim, the integrity of the claim has to be honored. So for every Muslim, excellence in the worldly role is part of the syllabus of being a Muslim. Covenant with, you get traders, and covenant with mediators and arbitrators. In order to excel collectively as a humankind, as the finest race, as the finest species, as the finest group, you have to eliminate fasad and dispute. Because if that will happen, we can't progress together. So Allah has a specific covenant with potential mediators to step in, to volunteer and resolve a dispute of any nature and category between families, states, peoples, traders, amongst. So ICC arbitration, ICSID arbitration framework, London Court of Arbitration framework, OIC, of course, my colleague sitting here. I'm ICC member and he's an OIC Secretary General. So you are fulfilling the covenant with Allah by running the center as good as you can possibly can. This is further explanation. I don't have the time to specifically go through the references which I have given, but I have summarized it. But for those who wish to take the copy of this, they can. Finally, covenants to uphold contracts will include private contracts, treaties, because Aqood and Misak includes all these 3. It includes private contracts, it includes the treaties, multilateral, bilateral, and it also includes legislative covenants, because you have a social contract with every state, every citizen, under political science theory has a social contract with the state. It has a duty to be compliant with the laws. So in that sense, every legislation of every country, barring where it is in contradiction with Quran, that you can steer clear of or you can challenge it. But barring that, about 95% of legislation in most of the countries is in conformity with the Quranic principles. That needs to be upheld. So private contracts, I've given just a few examples. Finally, if I may come to one more important point, when we say we need Islamic law and Islamic Sharia in respect of everything that we are dealing with, are we talking of creating a new codified framework parallel to what already exists in the world? My submission would be not required. What exists should be leveraged. This is what exists. That needs, we not specifically say we are having an Islamization of a specific international legal regime or a bilateral regime. This already exists. And if it is advancing a maqasid-e-sharia in one way or the other, something that we intend working on to identify some international conventions which are in conformity with the maqasid-e-sharia itself, then why not? Why not to adopt them as a religious duty, and when fulfilling them, have a niyat that you are doing it because your Quran tells you. So you not only be achieving a worldly success, but also getting the credit in the hereafter. So in this occupied legislative field means sometimes a legislature occupies a field and leaves the remaining to others. Federal government may identify certain areas it wishes to work on and leaves the remaining to the provinces. So Islam is, for example, identified. Quran has occupied field in these areas. These are the areas that we can legislate, draft regulations, regulatory frameworks, whether in Turkey, whether in Pakistan, whether wherever, whether at a global level. But the remaining need to be adopted. So
last 1 minute.
Yeah, existing legislative frameworks not inconsistent with the Quranic principles. We are specifically working on this to see, to measure, to match these with the various maqasid-e-sharia and also the principles of the ayats and various sunnahs and how they dovetail with it, so that there's a wholeheartedness to perform these. Because these are the instrument of success. If you want to achieve ghalba in the world, the ghalba cannot be achieved now because the UN Charter has prohibited acquisition of territory. You can't occupy territory through use of force as traditionally our heroes Muhammad bin Qasim and Tariq bin Ziyad would do. Today, ghalba is through legal mechanisms available globally. And if they are inconsistent, they must be fully made use of. So, occupied field, and then in my submission, we should have some venue where we declare adoption of the ones that we are. So this will be long. I'll leave it here, and I think we can conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you.